This is the PL-89 Gematriatic Quantum Thought Calendar for what was today. Today was Shabbat. It's Saturday night now, but today was Shabbat, the 23rd day of Kislev, 5786. The Parsha was Vayeshev, and the Daf Yomi, Zevachim 90. And it's also December 13th. 2025, and this PL-89 Gematriatic Quantum Thought Calendar is, I've called it the theory of everything presented in calendar form, and using Gematria as the technology or the method to calculate ideas. And it's several calendars in one. The time span, the amount of time is 90 days. And that 90 days has a special connection to several places in the Torah. Two that I can think of off the top of my head, but one that came specifically in today's week's Torah portion. And it's meant to remember Torah, to remember ideas and other information as well. It can apply to a wide variety of things, even to things like secular things like mathematics or business, numbers, money, things like that. And it's sort of like an all-in-all thought system that contains different calendars in it. And the two main calendars are the Hebrew and the Gregorian calendar, although it also keeps track of the Julian calendar, which was the calendar before the Gregorian calendar, and it's a Daf Yomi calendar. What I mean by that is, let's just say today is December 13th. On December 13th, it's always going to be, as you'll notice, there's no names of months at all. These are not names of months. These are just, should be changed. It's just some interesting names that are not months. It's called Oakwood Cabinets and Beverly Cabinets. It was just for me to keep order somehow. But it should eventually be changed to Aleph and Taf. So when I redo it, it'll be Aleph and Taf. But the way this is supposed to work is that when you look at the numbers together, you can see things that happened in the day, or you can see things, different values of different things, and weigh them out. For example, a good example is today, and what I mean by Gematria, many people think Gematria, and rightfully so, Gematria is a numerical value of words. But when I say Gematria, I'm thinking of just numbers in general. So it's measurements and metrics of everything, not just numerical values of words. So for me, a chapter number could be a Gematria. A time on the clock could be a Gematria. A price could be a Gematria. Address, phone number, etc. License plate. So with that thinking in mind, you can develop an idea by looking at the clock. You could say, okay, what time is it? It's 10:34 right now. And I know what 10:34 equals in Gematria, so I have an instant thought right now for a starter. I could say, I don't know off the top of my head 10:34, but let's just say 12:57. I do. Let's say it's 12:57. Here's an example of it. 12:57 equals the verse that Jacob said. Jacob was cooking something, and Esau came in from the field. And Jacob was cooking something in Hebrew, but so that's a good time for, let's say, for lunch. Let's say to go to lunch at 12:57 because Jacob was cooking food and Esau was very hungry. So it's a sort of a cute way of remembering. That's 12:57. That verse in Hebrew. I remember calculating it out, and with the Gematria calculator which I use, and so that's one way of doing it. So, for example, today you look at the calendar. Where are we on this calendar? So today, for December 13th, you're always going to be in box number 5. Always. It doesn't matter what month, if it's Kislev or December, because it's a lunar and solar calendar, and it's It's a nondescript, it's a generic calendar. So you superimpose whatever calendar you need into here, and you use it that way. So basically, so today happens to be December 13th, but when it was Kislev 13th, it was also in this box too. So I think of 5, okay? So then what do? I can scan down the column, and immediately down at the bottom of the column I see a 37. That works out well because today they read Parshas Vayeshev, and Vayeshev starts in Genesis 37. So I immediately have a connection. See, to me, that's a gematria. If I say, today, so 13 equals 5 equals 37. That's a gematria because December 13th equals, is equated with, equals 5 on the PL-89 calendar, which equals 37 because they read Genesis 37. And that's one example of how you're connecting the dots to different points of reality and making these equations. And some of them can get quite complex. Like it can go from a person's name to a certain food to a certain time on the clock. This equals and to a certain birthday, and each one, like this person's birthday is that thing's amount of calories, is that thing's phone number, like that kind of thing. But the idea is, the hope is, and the goal is to develop this to the point where these formulas are streamlined to the point where you can make some clear assessments of things based on these equations. So let's say today's the 13th, and they read Genesis, which was in 27, and it's all in the same column. So I'm not just jumping all over the place, I'm saying it's in the same column. There are certain connections that are stronger, and there's certain that are weaker. I mean, this is not the strongest type of thing. If I'm just going to go, it would be better if I was going in 5 and they read chapter 5. That would be in that box. That would be a stronger connection. And then there's points accordingly. Then you add more points to that connection. Okay, so here's an idea that I had. And the questions that I have, I like to always keep current. The question of, it's not this week's portion, but it's why in the Torah portion, in a printed Chumash, which is a Hebrew Bible, 5 books of Moses only. Chumash is the 5 books of Moses. And I've looked through different Chumashim, and when it comes to Parshas Veschanan, the Parsha of Veschanan, it's in Deuteronomy 3, I think. Deuteronomy 3. Is it 3? No, 3:2:3. No, I'm not sure what it is, but it's early Deuteronomy. It might be 3. It might be chapter 3, chapter 4, maybe around there. It's in part of chapter 3. I see it now. In fact, I have the numbers written down there. If you look at the back of the Chumash, you'll see that it's printed the amount of verses in the weekly Sedra, in the Parsha. And it's printed a mistake. It's printed 118, but there are actually 122 verses. Now, I saw the amount of verses in a computer program. Someone that did the weekly portion, and I quoted. I did a Dvar Torah based on that, and I ate at someone's house one time, and it was embarrassing because that person said, "Wait a minute, aren't there actually 118?" And then I said, "Well, let's go check it out." I'm pretty sure I checked the computer, but I didn't check the Chumash. Then we opened the Chumash at that person's house. When I was saying the thing, and then I was busted at the time. I was totally busted because I said that there are 122 verses in Parshas Veschanan, and he said there was 118, and we looked in the Chumash and it said 118. But the truth is that the Chumash is wrong. It's a misprint. And what's really interesting is that was Parshas Veschanan, Shabbos Nachamu, in the year 2021, and that came out on Shabbos. And 4 years later, in 2025, I'm in Jerusalem now. That was in Los Angeles. Now I'm in Jerusalem, and it was Shabbos, and it was also Tu B'Av, and it was at Parsha. I said, I remember that happened. I was reminiscing on that memory. I said, let me count that. Let me see. And I count that, and in fact, the Chumash are misprinted, and you know what? They won't change it. Even if you bring this to a printer's attention, it won't be changed. And my question is why? Why won't they change it if this is pointed out? And I can point it out, and if you like to count it, you can count it. The first, from the first portion, which is Perek Gimel, which is where Eschanan is 7 psukim. The fourth Perek, which is in Eschanan, is 49 psukim. 49 verses. Psukim are verses. 5 is 30 verses. Perek 5. Perek 6, 25 verses. And Perek 7 is 11 verses. 7 plus 49 plus 30 plus 25 plus 11 is 122. It's not 118. You can count it. In fact, I just counted it right now before I made this video. I counted it one by one. I mean, the verses, and I counted. So the question is, why is that the case? Why is it that the Chumashim won't change what they printed? So the reason why I thought that, how I can connect it with now, is that if I'm going from, let's just say 122, how do I get 122 on this calendar if there is no 122 here? Because it's called the rule of 40. The rule of 40 is that any number from 1 to 10 trillion or to infinity, if you add 40 to it, you stay in the same box. So for example, let's just say, I'm talking about the number 122, right? In this calendar, it's 1 through 40 twice. That's how you have your 80. It's 1 through 40, and it comes back around to 1 through 40. So where's 122 here? 122 is going to be in box number 2 right here. Why? Because 2 plus 40 is 42. 42 plus 40 is 82. And 82 plus 40 is 122. Therefore, 122 is here. Now, I'm thinking, okay, 122, and today it was the Kislev the 23rd. Where is Kislev 23 on this calendar? It's right next to it. And the rule is that you see these two purples? They can become like an Excel. They call it a cell merge. It becomes one. Therefore, that thought that I had about, in this day, in this calendar, just attributed to this calendar day, is linked right next to it. Is right here. So when I thought about 122, now don't forget, there's another. The contender. Who is the contender? It was 118, right? What's 118 here? Where do you find 118? You find 118, its root number, its patriarch, where it starts, is in 38. Why? Because 38 plus 40 is 78. 78 plus 40 is 118. Look what I can do. 122 goes straight up to 38. You see that? There's a neural pathway in your mind. That whole memory, that whole thought, and you can see it, they're in the same column. I don't have to go here and here and here and here. Look, it's really logical. What's interesting is that also this column it's in question that I'm talking about is right in between the Hebrew date and the English date. It's sandwiched in between. Look, the 13th day of December is in box 5. See this column? It's in column 3. The 23rd day of Kislev is in column 5. And where was that whole thought that I described about Shabbos Nachamu? And it's right sandwiched in the middle. And you go straight up. See 2, this is 122. Go to 38, which is 118. So that's an example of how the PL-89 gematriatic quantum thought counter, I think it explains what it is. It's explaining that the thoughts and memories are calculated gematriatically, but they happen in time.